Hello, Soundies. Welcome to our Sound for Video session. Today is the 2nd of June, 2024. Good to have you with us. Hope everybody's doing well out there, and looks like most people are reporting sunny conditions. That's great. Sunny here too in the mountains of Utah. Let's take a look at our agenda and see what we're going to cover today. First up, like all of our live streams, this is a workshop which goes along with our courses over at school.learnlightandsound.com. If you would like to be notified ahead of time of the topic for the live streams, you can sign up for free over at the school. You don't have to buy anything. Also, of course, we have our courses there. So if there's anything there that can help you take your sound up a notch, then we'd invite you to join some of our courses there as well. Today we're going to take a look at the Shure NexaDyne 8C handheld dynamic microphone. First of all, thanks and shout out to Matt Ruff. This is actually Matt's microphone. He sent it over to me. Then we're going to ship it over to him as soon as we're done with the video here. So thanks, Matt, for providing the mic so that we could take a listen to it here. And then we will go to the Q&A in our chat. We didn't have any questions that were submitted ahead of time, so we'll just go to the chat as soon as we're done here. But what I wanted to do was listen to a few of these different microphones. And actually, before we do that, get a little bit of context on what is Shure NexaDyne and why should we even bother with it? Let's go ahead and switch over to the Mac and take a look and see what Shure says about it, first of all. So, there are actually two microphones that they just released. There's the NexaDyne 8C and the 8S. The 8C is a cardioid microphone, a cardioid polar pattern microphone, so it picks up mostly what's in front of it, falls off to the sides to some extent, although it looks like it's a fairly wide cardioid, and then at the back of the microphone, it is least sensitive. So that's what the cardioid version is like. There's also the S version, which is the super cardioid version. So super cardioid will have generally a narrower sensitive region on the front of the microphone, fall off at the sides a little bit more quickly, and then have a little bit of a pickup on the back of the microphone. Definitely less sensitive than the front, but kind of just narrow the pattern out a little bit and then pick up this little tail on the back. That's kind of the distinction between cardioid and supercardioid. All right, but what makes the NexaDyne 8C unique or interesting is that they've kind of done some interesting things. So here's Shure's marketing copy. This is what they say. The NexaDyne 8C dynamic vocal microphone is a cardioid dynamic microphone for professional live vocal performance. So first of all, let's just stop there. This is meant for live stage singing is basically, I think that's the idea. When they say that, I get in my mind, okay, it's a vocal microphone for someone singing on a stage for a live performance. That's really its intended purpose. Okay. It features patented Shure Revonic dual-engine transducer technology. We'll talk about that in just a little bit more in a moment. The clean and natural cardioid pickup pattern of the NexaDyne 8C allows vocals to easily reach every corner of the venue. Includes a mic clip and carrying case. Well, that's pretty high level. There are a couple of videos here. So there's this first video, and I think let me make sure I have this right. Yeah, that's the first video here, I believe, is sort of kind of testimonials from different people who have tried the NexaDyne, front of house engineers, artists, some fairly big names, that and including the Grand Ole Opry, which I believe, Matt, you talked to somebody over the Grand Ole Opry who has used it and was really excited about it. But there's a second video that also talks about the technology of NexaDyne, what exactly they did, well, in more detail what they did. And that's worth a watch as well, if you're really interested. Here's the high level right here, how it's better. So each NexaDyne 8C microphone contains Revonic dual-engine transducer technology, so you're going to get more of the sound you want and less of the sound you don't want is the idea. It does acoustic signal processing. So there are two transducers, essentially two things that are picking up sound. So that gives them the opportunity to really kind of tune in the polar pattern of the microphone and make sure that you're getting the sound that you want and rejecting the sound that you don't want. This was actually something that they did in the early days of microphone designs, but the manufacturing tolerances weren't nearly as good, so it was really hard to get this done back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean like in the 1920s. It was in the 1930s, I believe, that the Unidyne was first invented, and that essentially they were able to achieve a cardioid or a directional polar pattern without using 2 transducers. So now we're coming back to 2 transducers, and that gives the engineers the ability to really tune the polar pattern, the sensitivity pattern. So that's one idea. They also say natural and clear reach the corner of every venue with mid-range and high-end clarity that rivals condenser microphones. This will be interesting because dynamic microphones do have a tendency, generally, to sound a little bit more muffled, not to be quite as clear as condenser microphones, not quite as crisp, especially not as sensitive in the higher frequencies. So we can actually test that today here by putting our voices through it. Why it's better. So again, less of what you don't want. Every Nexadyne 8C is tuned for superior off-axis rejection. We'll see what that does in terms of coloration as well. I'll kind of turn the mic around as I speak into it and see how the voice gets colored or not colored as we get off-axis from the front of the mic. More acoustic signal processing. So Revonic cartridges are meticulously configured to work together to manage unwanted internal and external handling noise. And the Revonic 2 transducer design manages this without the need for traditional pneumatic shock mounting. So normally for handheld microphones, one of the things they have to do is they have to put shock mounting inside of the microphone so that when you move the microphone, it's less likely to, or you're handling the microphone, it's less likely to transfer those vibrations into the microphone capsule. So that's one thing to keep in mind as well. So they're doing is instead, they're using the 2 capsule design to do that, to manage that noise, as opposed to using a pneumatic, maybe a sort of, when I think of pneumatic, I think of some sort of rubberized material that suspends the capsule in some fashion. So evidently the Nexadyne doesn't do that. Instead, they're using these 2 capsules to cancel out handling noise in some fashion. Obviously, to do this, they're talking about quality that's in the details, breakthrough standards in both creating and manufacturing the new technology. Manufacturing Revonic transducers and Nexadyne vocal microphone requires precise tolerances of design, materials, and manufacturing consistency, so on and so forth. So that's the marketing copy. Let's go to the overhead mic and take a look, or overhead camera, and take a look at the mic. So this is it here. This is the Nexadyne 8C, the cardioid version. You can see the little Shure branding on the side there. Looks very similar, in fact, to the KSM8, which is the previous generation dynamic microphone that they released, probably 10 or 12 years ago or something like that. Obviously, it comes with before I show you that, this is the mic clip it comes with. This is actually my quick release. That's not part of it there, but that's the mic clip, and there's also the 5/8 to 3/8 inch adapter that it comes with, as well as a semi-hard case that looks like that. Okay, so here is the Nexadyne 8C, and here's the KSM8 for comparison. Pretty similar in size, very, very close. The KSM8 maybe is just a little bit taller. But in terms of visual appearances, they're looking pretty similar. Now, I'm going to do one other thing here. I'm going to go ahead and open this, and let's see what it looks like in here. We're going to be very careful here, Matt, I promise. There is the Revonic cartridge. So you can see one of the transducers. Is that one of the transducers on top? I think that is. And then there's some openings on the side here. Here's where it says Revonic. And this is sort of a rubber material here. Feels like sort of a soft, semi-soft kind of thing. So that's the cartridge. Comparing that to the KSM8, just for curiosity here. Being very careful with the threads, of course. There we are. KSM8 cartridge looks substantively different. It's also got 2 capsules, as I understand it, in their design. But it uses this is some sort of a metal material here, with these openings on the side as well. Okay, so that's all well and good, but how a microphone sounds, of course, is the most important thing. So let's go ahead and rig this up and have a listen. But before we do that, let's see if there are any questions in the chat. Danny, do you want to take a look through there for us? I'm going to go ahead and rig this up on a stand here.
Just Just the ones on topic?
Off-topic questions, we'll come back to those, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, just the ones on topic for now. You don't have a KSM 11 by chance, do you? I don't. No. Sorry about that, Christopher.
Is this related? Or is that?
Can someone explain what all these cartridges attach to? Well, typically they have they'll have some potentially some electronics in the body, some various electronic components, and then they'll of course be attached to the XLR output. Is there some sort of standard wireless or exchangeable body that cartridges get screwed into? Well, there is. You can actually buy handheld wireless transmitters, and then you can attach a different microphone capsule to it. So yes, to answer your question there. So yeah, for example, Sennheiser has that. I know, I believe Sony has that kind of system. Some of the other, Shure, of course, has that kind of system as well. They sell just the capsules that attach to other wireless units, so that is an option as well. Matt, they sell it as a cartridge only for wireless systems. Got to see one of those at the Grand Ole Opry. Yes, indeed. Okay. All right, we now have the microphone, the Nexadyne up here, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the Nexadyne. Okay, I would recommend that you use your best headphones, and here I am on the Nexadyne. I can get up very, very close on the Nexadyne, just so we can see whether or how much proximity effect there is. This is very, very close. Now I'm actually almost touching the microphone capsule, and then at a more common distance for spoken word at least. One of the things I wanted to say is that I realize I am not like the target audience for this microphone. It sounds like it's really made for, again, stage, live vocal performance. Obviously, we're testing it here more in a spoken word kind of capacity. So I understand that. Keep that in mind if you are looking for a vocal performance microphone for someone, a vocalist singing on stage. These tests are interesting perhaps, but not necessarily like the main use case. So what I mean by that in particular is one of the things that they seem to cover in their marketing material as being so unique about this is that you have the cardioid version and the supercardioid version. So if you're going to be on a really loud stage, presumably you would use the supercardioid version to be less likely to pick up, to get feedback, capturing the amplified sound from the loudspeakers back into the microphone and creating that feedback screeching. So we're not testing any of that. We're obviously here in a live stream situation where we're not amplifying the sound in the same space. So that's a big, huge, huge difference, first of all. And all the testimonials on the website are from musicians and front of house engineers, mix engineers, so or even monitoring engineers. So they're the ones that are, again, working on these live shows. Okay. With that, so your ears have hopefully gotten used to the Nexadyne so far. I'm curious what your first impressions are. Please go ahead and put that in the chat, and I'm going to go ahead and get another microphone ready here. So let's get the KSM8 ready, and we'll switch over to that so you can hear how the two of them sound relative to each other. So go ahead and connect the KSM8. This is, again, the previous generation. And now I'll go ahead and switch over to the KSM8. Okay, here we are on the Shure KSM8, and just to get really, really close for proximity, here's the proximity effect on the KSM8, and I think that was one of the things, as I recall, when they released the KSM8, as I looked at the marketing material, I think that's one of the things is they tried to control proximity effect better than they had on their previous generation Unidyne 3 microphones, including the Shure SM58 and the Shure SM57. Okay, now here's at more of a distance, so probably 10 centimeters, 3 inches, something like that, somewhere in there. So that is what it sounds like when you're at a little bit more of a distance. Let's go ahead and switch back to the Nexadyne. Okay, we are now back on the Nexadyne 8C. So this is the Nexadyne 8C. Again, proximity effect, and then at a more traditional spoken word distance from the microphone. So let's pause there and see what anyone has to say in the chat. Anything in the chat of interest yet? Okay, what's signal path for the Nexadyne? So everything is going through the Mackie DLZ creator today, from the Mackie DLZ into the Canon C200, which is where it gets converted. So it's coming in at line level to the Canon C200 and then getting converted to digital from there. So and then that goes to the ATEM. Mark, how does it do with plosives? A common problem with musicians and public speakers. We're going to check that. It's a great question.
And then you got people clamoring for the SM58, which you got that in the queue. So
Okay, SM58 and SM57 are coming up. Stand by on those. We will be comparing those as well. So let's do a little plosive sample here. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. Let's do that on the KSM8. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. That's the KSM8. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers.
you got that closer.
Danny's pointing at something.
You have it closer to you than you had the other one.
Oh, this is closer.
Yeah.
Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. Back on the Nexadyne. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. Hard to tell on your own voice, but that's a sample right there for you. Okay. Did you have an assessment on that? Did one sound have more plosive issues than the other?
I think the Nexadyne had less.
Nexadyne seem to have less. Okay. All right. All right.
But
Go
they're
ahead.
pretty similar.
Pretty similar. Okay. Go ahead and leave a note in the chat here. Let us know what you're hearing there. Very curious. I will say my initial impressions are that for a dynamic microphone, the Nexadyne 8C definitely has a clearer feel to it than these other mics. And in fact, let's go ahead and connect the SM58 next to get you a sense for how they compare.
I have a very important question.
A very important question. Audio buff. Monica, the wife, wants to know when the peppers turned purple. Well, we got a very special heirloom variety that was purple from the start, so hope that helps, Monica. Okay, let's switch over to the Shure SM58, the classic Unidyne 3 dynamic microphone that is on millions of stages. What are you doing?
Trying to make sure you're...
Okay, this is the Shure SM58. Shure SM58. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of purple pickled peppers. Now Monica's got me laughing. I can't even say it straight anymore. That is, this again is the Shure SM58. Here is the proximity sample. If I get up really close, you can hear how boomy it gets. If I move away a few inches here, then it gets not quite as boomy, not quite as bassy, and that's how it sounds. Let's go ahead and switch back to the Nexadyne for comparison. And here we are back on the Nexadyne 8C. Again, no processing on any of these, so we're not doing any compression, no EQ, no de-essing, no noise gating on any of these. The only one that has a noise gate or a compressor or anything is the Earthworks Ethos, which is kind of not a fair comparison to all the rest of these. So I'm curious if you heard what I heard. The SM58 to me sounds duller, not nearly as articulate in the mid and high frequencies as the Nexadyne. The Nexadyne seems much clearer there to me, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Okay, we have a lot of comments.
A lot of comments now. Here we go. Okay, we're on the Nexadyne for reference right now. Making it hard for Danny to choose.
Yeah, I'm just trying to...
Put them in order. Here it goes. Seems EQ for vocals rise around 3K. Smooth. Okay, very good. I think the Nexadyne sounds more transparent. Pretty pleasing. Okay, very good. Nexadyne has more clarity for Linda. Very good, Linda. Thanks for sharing that. Very nice set round sound on the Nexadyne. Good, good. Also less plosives. Good. Nexadyne, less plosives from Eric. Absolutely. Nexadyne sounds better for plosives from Rag and Bone Puppet Theater. Nexadyne is well balanced. Very good. Thanks, Brian. I agree. Less plosives on the Nexadyne. Love the sound of the Nexadyne. There you go. That's what Shure is looking for. Nexadyne seems to have more presence. Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it as well.
Let's see.
It did seem a little mid-rangey to me, but I think for a vocal mic you want that because then it can, as they say, cut through the mix a little bit more. So if you have a bunch of instruments plus vocals. You don't want the vocals getting buried in the entire mix. Linda says the SM58 is still a boss for the money. I agree. Yeah, it's, oh, by the way, so the Nexadyne 8C and the 8S both come in at $299 US. Eric says, for some reason, I always associate Shure SM50Xs with the proximity effect. Well, you're not wrong, Eric. There's a reason for that. They are very susceptible to the proximity effect and also to plosives while we're at it. They seem a little bit more likely to pick up on plosives from my experience. That's, in fact, why when it's on the president's podium, you will always see, well, 99.9% of the time, you'll see a foam cover like this on it, which actually leaves a gap between the front of the top of the microphone, so room for the air to disperse before it hits the capsule. Not from an engineering standpoint, but as an audio person, a listener. Yeah, totally makes sense. Nexadyne sounds smoother and brighter. I think that's a good description as well. That kind of fits with what I was hearing. Nexa supercardioid have more sensitive than cardioid. I don't know about sensitivity. Incidentally, just for curiosity, to get to where we're at here, this is 60 dB of gain. Just so you're aware, it's still a dynamic microphone. I have a quieter voice that doesn't project quite as much as other voices necessarily. So I find, for example, with the Shure SM7B, I almost always have to gain that up to about 65 dB for normal spoken word talking distance. This one needed about 5 dB less gain to get there. So this is at 60 dB for the Nexadyne, for what you're hearing today. How do you think the Nexadyne compares to the Earthworks handheld? You know what's interesting is the, what is the model number on that? SR317 or something? I don't remember the model number on the Earthworks handheld. I don't like using it handheld. And I don't like using it without a pop filter, the Earthworks, because I felt like it, while it sounded beautiful, it was very sensitive. You could hand hold it if you're very careful. You just need to keep a firm grip on it and not be like doing any of this kind of thing. But you know what's interesting is most of the performances I've seen with the Earthworks is it's in a clip on a stand. I don't know if that's because and it's not always when the musician is playing an instrument. Part of the time it's when they have an instrument, but even those without an instrument, sometimes it seems like I've mostly seen them in stands. I haven't seen a ton of them in use, but the ones I have seen in use usually on stands. I can tell you from what I heard at the Grand Ole Opry, they are replace all the SM58s with the Nexadyne. Yeah, that would make sense to me. Christopher, not something I expect Matt wants you to test, but SM58 is known for being indestructible. I wonder how the Nexadyne will fare over time. Well, let me go get a nail and a piece of wood. I'll be right back. Fachiri, same mindset. Can you hammer a nail with a Nexadyne and test how well it works as a hammer compared to the SM58? That's not all. Oh, no. Matt's got $300 on the line here, people. And I would never do that to Matt's equipment here. Question, what are the frequency references for Nexadyne among the others? Do you mean the frequency response charts? What do those look like? Let's go over to the Mac and take a look and see what we can find. Here's the brochure. It should be in the spec sheet. Spec sheet. Here we go. Okay, let's see if we can make this a little bigger. Okay. It looks like it's fairly neutral until you get to about 2 kilohertz, and we start to get a bump here. This is a 5 dB bump. Tops out at about 6 dB, actually. Falls back down. So this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kilohertz. So it dips back down. So this is 2, 3, 4. Dips back down at 5 kilohertz, which is good because that's the sibilance range. So they were probably doing that intentionally. They didn't want a bunch of sibilance. Although some sibilance can be up a little higher. And this is still boosted by about 5 dB. So it's definitely brighter here, and then it falls off pretty significantly after 10 kilohertz. My general sense is that there are definitely other frequencies up here, and that's one of the things that Earthworks touts is, well, even the stuff that we can't hear can make a difference to the sound, even if it's psychological. I don't know exactly how all that works, but they're kind of their philosophy, at least originally. I don't know if this is still the case, but originally they wanted to make their microphones as sort of as close to 0 dB out to the highest frequency they could, even well beyond what is normally considered the normal human hearing range, up to 40 kilohertz, for example. In any case, this definitely is still a dynamic microphone, so we see it fall off here once you get past 10 kilohertz pretty substantially. Looks like it probably at about, maybe at about 11 or 12, it starts to drop off quite a bit by as much as 10 dB once you get up here to probably 17 kilohertz. In any case, that's what that looks like. We'll pull up maybe an SM58 in just a moment here. Here's the polar pattern. They were kind enough to show the different frequencies. So down here at the lower frequencies up to 1 kilohertz, they're almost identical. There's a tiniest little bit of a tail here on the cardioid version. And then I assume this is all for the cardioid. Yes, all for the cardioid. When you get to the higher frequencies, the differences off at the sides start to show just a tiny bit, although that's very well controlled. And then at the highest frequency, they're showing here 8 kilohertz. There's a little bit of a tail here. It's still 15 dB lower than the front of the mic, but there is a bit of a tail. Okay, now let's, I'm going to go ahead and open up another tab here and go to Shure. Danny has something to say, it looks like.
we still have more comments.
Okay, go ahead and pull those up. I'm going to just get this queued up for us later. Speaking of plosives, does the Nexadyne have a pop filter, foam or other? So it has a metal grill that has, it looks like multiple layers based on when I took it off and looked at it. It does have multiple layers. The SM58, for comparison, has the outer metal grill, and then it has a foam. I don't know if you'll be able to see this or not. Inside there is a thin foam insert that fits all the way around the ball inside. So they took a different approach here. I think with this one they have an outer metal grill plus an inner finer grill, metal mesh of some sort is my guess. I don't know if that was what you're asking, but that is what I've observed so far. I don't know if they have a bespoke foam cover for it as well. It doesn't come with one. Speaking of handling noise, that would be a good test to do a comparison of here on the live stream. So far you've been using it in the stand. Let's do it. Okay, so right now we're on the Nexadyne. I now have it in my hand, and what I want to do is just get the cable free here because it can transfer through the cable. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let me put my headphones on. Okay, so here's me handling the microphone. This is not what you should do, but just for demonstration purposes. Okay, check, check, 1, 2, check, check. Okay, not bad there. Let's try the SM58 for comparison. Okay, here we are on the SM58. Okay, check, check. I don't know. You tell me if that was better or worse. Seemed about the same to me.
It's pretty good. It seems.
It's actually pretty good, yeah.
On both. Hey, now you didn't do that with the other one.
No, I didn't do that with the other one. Anyway, that's handling. Let's try the SM57. Here I'm back on the Nexadyne in the meantime. Okay, moving over to the SM57. Now, this is the SM57. Remember, this is basically considered an instrument mic, not so much a vocal mic, but it is handheld. What's that?
It's less.
Danny says it's less. That part's about the same, is my experience. No?
Less.
Less. Okay. It could be the foam cover is affecting it in some fashion. Okay, let's go back to the Nexadyne. I think it's probably fair to say that the Nexadyne isn't, I don't know, it's not substantially worse than the others. So it's doing it a different way. Instead of having a pneumatic suspension type of thing inside of the microphone, it's actually using the capsules to actively reduce the handling noise, is my understanding, if I understand the Revonic technology right. So there's that. Let's also try the KSM8 while we're at it. Same, no worse, better on handling noise. That was my impression too. It's hard
And then here's some
live here.
ago.
Charles said, agreed on hand-holding. Earthworks seemed wicked sensitive. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, we have a little more comic relief.
Yes, give it a whack.
No, but then you need this.
I'll donate my fake 416 for a single thump.
No.
Mark, it's very kind of you to advocate for these kind of things, the full test. But let's go ahead and do the handling noise on the KSM8 here. Oh, here's a good question from Shoji. Is the Nexadyne basically an improved SM58 or is a new category of mic for sure? I think it's their new live performance. I think my sense is that they're kind of pitching it as their flagship for the new standard for live performance. So yeah, I don't think they're going to say we're not selling the SM58 anymore. I think there are plenty of venues out there using them, trying to, keep things consistent. They're still going to sell SM58s, and I think there's still a market for those, especially at 1/3 the price. But I do think that front of house engineers, a lot of them maybe, if they've got the budget, they're probably going to be looking at Nexadyne, is my sense. I think there is a substantive difference in terms of sound. So let's do some handling noise on the KSM8. Let me get my headphones on here without twisting everything up. And switching on over. Okay, here we are on the KSM8. Things can get pretty gnarly on stage sometimes. I don't know. That seemed kind of in the same general range, maybe a little bit more. Okay, cool. Switching back to the Nexadyne.
We have a requested test.
We have a request for another test. Can you tap away on your keyboard to show how it rejects or doesn't reject the tapping? We can do that. I have to confess, though, I have it sitting on a sound blanket. So the stand is on a sound blanket. So there is some isolation, but I can definitely type here. Let's go ahead and open a new tab. So I have the Apple keyboard that looks like this, just for reference. It's not the loudest keyboard. It's not it's like a mechanical keyboard that makes a big racket. Okay, there's a sense there. Depends on how have you noticed some people are heavier typists than others? Let's be a heavy typist. It's not normally how I type, but okay, there's a little test for you. All right, what I'm interested in as well is doing an off-axis sample here, just so you can hear what it sounds like when I'm talking directly into the mic, and whether or not there's any coloration as we go around the mic. So let's go ahead and try that a little bit. So let's pull that out of its clip. Here I am on the front of the microphone. This is at 0 degrees, directly on axis. And then I'm going to slowly turn here until I am 90 degrees off axis. This is 90 degrees off axis. And then we're coming back to on axis. go ahead and woo. Okay, I'm going to come to the back of the microphone, 180 degrees off axis, 180 degrees off axis, coming back to 90 degrees off axis. This is 90 degrees off axis, and this is on axis at 0 degrees. Okay, let's see what we get. What do you think? Tell me what you heard. This is an active session. We're learning here, teaching each other.
Reese have comments from the handling.
Okay, yeah, so we'll get some of those comments on the handling noise. I like the sound of the Nexadyne so far. With the rubber mount, seems like less handling noise. This is an interesting frequency chart. Nexadyne, especially dropping at 10 kilohertz, sure knows what they've done. Indeed, Brian. Sounds the same to me. Similar on handling. That was my impression generally, too. The KSM8 may have had a tiny bit more. Yeah, none of them were immune 100%. So, while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and do a sibilance sample here. Really good off-axis avoidance. Yes, sounded pretty distinct there. Nice polar pattern test. Rejects off-axis pretty well, I think. It's a lovely mic and 200 more than I want to pay. I hear you, Linda. We are only doing this because of the kindness of Matt Ruff today. When we do the off-axis, one thing to listen for as well is coloration. But again, based on the polar pattern charts that we saw, there wasn't a lot of off-axis coloration in the chart. And when I listen to it here, I'm not hearing a lot of coloration as well. So good off-axis isolation from Mark as well. Yeah, they seem to have done a really nice job there. Off topic, would you know if what the reason they use the SM57 over the SM58 at the White House? Yeah, we had an interview with our friend over at SHURE, and I think he talked about that just a little bit. But I think it was a lower profile microphone. I think that was part of the reasoning. But I don't know the full reason. I think once they put the windshields on, and it's all kind of, it blends in, so it's all black. It's not calling attention to itself. I don't think they wanted it calling attention to itself. You could put a foam cover on this as well, I suppose, but it would just be bigger. So there's a little more svelte, perhaps. But that's just my thoughts. I don't know if that's the official reason or not. Okay, let's do some sibilance samples here. I have plenty of sibilance in my voice, and we did see on the frequency response charts there's a little dip there at 5 kilohertz, so it wasn't quite as prominent there as the rest of the seeming boost there. Also, can I just say kudos to SHURE? Let's cut back to this on the Mac here, Danny. How often do you see frequency response charts that look like that, kind of jaggedy? And the answer is almost never. And the reason why is that almost all the other manufacturers do a lot of averaging and smoothing. And so I'm usually highly skeptical of these things. But I feel like SHURE is probably being a little bit more transparent. I don't think they're bragging with this chart. To me, it seems like it's probably a little bit closer to reality. So thank you for that, SHURE. All right. With that, sibilance sample. Plenty of sibilance in my voice. For those that aren't familiar, when one says the letter C or S, even sometimes with T and some others, there's a sizzling noise, and it depends partly on the structure of one's mouth, the shape of one's mouth, and how their tongue moves within the mouth and behind the teeth, and so on and so forth. All those things kind of combined make some voices more sibilant than others. Here is a quick sample. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. Now we'll switch to the KSM8. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. Okay, back on the Nexadyne. Actually, let's do this for reference. Let's do it on a condenser microphone, the Earthworks Ethos. Okay, here's the earthwork ethos. Now, granted, it does have a foam cover on it. I'll do it with and without the foam cover. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. Now I'm going to take the foam cover off. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. Okay. You probably got a sense for that there. The foam cover, the reason I took the foam cover off is that foam cover can actually attenuate some of those higher frequencies and make the sibilants less prominent. Note, if you have a very sibilant voice and there's nothing else you can do, sometimes putting a foam cover on can help the situation. Just something to keep in mind. All right, so there's the sibilant sample. Let's go ahead and get a sibilant sample on the SM58 as well while we're at it. We'll go ahead and switch over to the SM58. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. And then we'll come back to the Nexadyne. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. Now we're on the SM57. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. And we are now back on the Nexadyne as well. If you do, just a couple of notes here. The reason I was switching back and forth quite quickly there is that when you hear the contrast of two microphones, it's important to do it fairly quickly. If you talk on a single microphone for quite a while, your human ears have a tendency to kind of get used to the sound. It's almost like they're processing it in your brain. You're processing it, and so that's one reason why I switched pretty quickly there, just so you can hear that contrast. Okay, so what's everyone's thoughts on sibilants? What have we got in the chat going on right now? The Nexadyne sounds brighter, but sibilance is not severe. Very clean sound. Very good. Sibilance on Nexadyne is really dampened, but not as damped as the SM50Xs, 57 and 58. Shoji asks, will you be adding the Nexadyne to your mic collection? Well, I don't know the answer. I don't have any immediate plans. Also, Danny's here, and she is not necessarily thinking that I need a lot of additional microphones. I own and purchased with my own money the SM57 and the 58. The KSM8 was given to me in exchange for a review a couple of years ago. I did not buy that with my own money. I don't have any immediate plans. I'm not saying it's a bad microphone. It's actually quite good. It's just not something that I really need right now. The Nexadyne performance is pretty dang good overall. I would agree. I do think that from what I'm observing here, Shure has made a step forward from what I can tell. Is it, our front of house engineers that have the budget going to upgrade to them? Probably. I think a lot of them will. Does everyone absolutely, if they have any sort of self-respect, have to upgrade to them? I don't know about that. If you're working on a tighter budget, I think an SM58 can get you a long, long way. It's amazing drop in the off-axis test. I could see how that would be a plus for sound engineers. Yeah, you know what? We didn't do that on the SM58, did we? Let's do that on the SM58 for comparison. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to pull this mic out. There'll be a little bit of handling noise here. Okay, let's move this out of the way. I'm going to do the off-axis sample here again, talking directly into the front of the microphone at 0 degrees. Now I am approximately 90 degrees off-axis to the side of the microphone, and now I'm going to the back of the microphone at 180 degrees, where in my observation you're hearing primarily the reflected sound that's getting into the front. Here I am back at 90 degrees off axis, and now here I am directly on axis at 0 degrees. Let's go ahead and switch to the SM58. Okay, here I am on the SM58 at 0 degrees, directly on axis, and now I am turning the microphone so that I am 90 degrees off axis on the Shure SM58, and we are turning it farther. So now I am at 180 degrees off axis at the back of the microphone. This is the Shure SM58 coming back to 90 degrees off axis on the Shure SM58, and now I am at 0 degrees on axis on the Shure SM58. The SM58 sounded less sensitive to me on the side and the back than the Nexidyne. This is, I think, a good example of the engineering trade-offs that one has to make. So what I can say with confidence is that the Nexidyne definitely has a clearer sound to it. It is definitely more sensitive it seems like in the mid and high frequencies, clearer, less kind of muddy up there, or less, more articulate there, I should say. The SM58 definitely sounds overall more kind of that muffled or veiled sound to it a little bit. But I don't think it performed any poorer. It almost seemed better at rejecting to the side and back than the Nexidyne. Now, the Nexidyne, part of what they're selling with the Nexidyne, though, is that they want, when you're doing live performance, if you get off axis of the microphone a little bit, you don't want it to fall off right away. You want it to fall off when you definitely get way off axis like this, but you don't want it to fall off if you're just a little bit off, if a performer is just a little bit off. So there's a kind of an art there. There's a trade-off, like how wide do you want the cardioid polar pattern to be? How much off axis do you want it to still pick them up? And that's where microphone technique was super, super important with the SM58. Like you had to be right on to get the sound that you want. So that put more on the performer in terms of making sure that you get the final sound that you're looking for. With the Nexidyne, it seems a little bit more forgiving. The downside of that is that it did seem to me, at least in that sample, to not reject the sound quite as much as the SM58. Again, it's another thing altogether to put it on a stage in an environment where you're doing live sound reinforcement and see how it performs there. And that's where I would turn to the front of house engineers that they interviewed or others that have used it that didn't go into the Shure video and find out what they have to say about it, what their experience is in those circumstances. Okay, take a look at the chat here again.
We're going to go back, way back.
We're going back, way back, possibly to the very beginning of time to see. Oh, this is from Shoji. Off-topic question, what L-mount batteries do you use with the Mix Pre series, and about how much record time do you get? I've been using mostly Watson is the name of the company. You can buy them at B&H. They come in different capacities, so it just depends on which capacity battery you get. And I don't know right off the top of my head with the larger ones. I can go grab one. Let me go grab one. 1 second. Okay, so this is one of the L mounts that I've been using. This one is by the company called Watson. We can go to the overhead camera, actually. Show you this. So this is a Watson 7800 or 1000? 7800 milliamp hour. Yeah, 7800. So I would say that this is a guess because I don't know exactly, to be honest, Shoji. But I would say that probably powers my Mix Pre 3 depends on which Mix Pre, of course. We can go ahead and switch back to the main cam. Mix Pre 3 probably depends on how many channels you have on with phantom power. But usually with 1 or 2 microphones, especially if they're dynamics, you could get definitely hours. On the Mix Pre 10, that's going to be shortened, of course, just more power hungry, especially if you're using a lot of the inputs. I'm going to guess you'd get like 6 hours or maybe more on the Mix Pre 3 with dynamic mics at least. So substantially longer than you do with the AA batteries. I assume that's what you're asking. So that's how I power them. All right, Mr. Joe Gooch. Hello from the UK. Cheers. Glad to have you join us today. Thanks for all your great work over the years. Keep it up. Cheers, Joe. Thank you so much, Joe. It's great to have you here. Thanks for joining us today. Glad you could be part of the community here. Hardy Media, question. Can you discuss a comparison to the Beta 87A capsule? Awesome for singing. Okay, yes, let's take a look and see. I mean, I don't have an 87A here. I've never used the 87A, to be honest. So I can't really speak to it. What I was looking up here was the SM58. Let's go to Shure's site. Let's look at the spec sheet for the SM58. We were going to look at that earlier. Open this up. There we go. Oh, it wants to download it. Okay. Now let's go ahead and switch back to the main cam. All right. Okay, we can go back to the Mac here. This is, there's a spec sheet that's basically for all of the SM microphones. So there's a 7B. Let's get to the 58. Here's the 50. Oh, that's the 48. 57. Here's the 58. Okay. You can see here at the one thing is that they say at the higher frequencies, let's see. This is 8 kilohertz right here, and that is 10 dB lower. That's interesting. So they're actually saying by the polar charts here, polar pattern charts, that at least at 8 kilohertz, the SM58 is more sensitive on the back than the Nexidyne is. Interesting. I don't know that we necessarily tested that with just voice because, well, I don't know. Anyway, that's interesting. So this is what the frequency response chart looks like for the SM58. If we go back to the Nexidyne, let's go back to the Nexidyne chart. This is the Nexidyne chart. So quite a boost, again, starting just after 1 kilohertz, right around maybe starting, you could say around 2 kilohertz. Similar here, but this looks much smoother. And then there's a dip. The dip is not at 5 kilohertz. So in theory, the SM58 should be a little bit harsher on sibilance if the sibilance is in the 5 kilohertz, 6 kilohertz range, in theory at least. Did you notice a difference in sibilance on the SM58 versus the Nexidyne?
I'd have to hear it.
We'd have to hear it again. Okay. Let's go ahead and try it. Here is the Nexidyne. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. This is the SM58. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells. This is Nexidyne. She sells seashells by the seashore. By the seashore, she sells seashells.
They're different.
They're different? Yeah. Which one's harsher?
They're harsh in different ways.
They're harsh in different ways. Okay. I may have the worst sibilance in the world. I don't know. Possibly. Okay. Yeah, 87. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't have any. I've not used the 87A, so I'm not really sure about that. Off topic, how can the gain be set on the Zoom F3 when recording in 32-bit? I mean, you want some control, right? Yeah, you set it before you start recording. You set the recording, it's not gain, it's actually, it's post-fader gain, I guess you could call it. So it's digital gain. The Zoom F3 and the Zoom F6, when they're in 32-bit float mode, you are technically not setting the analog, you're not setting gain on the analog preamplifier. That is set, and it's not an option to change it. If you want to record at a higher level on the F3 and the F6, what you can do is, well, let's just talk about the F3 because that's what you asked about. Before you start recording, you can change the little levels there. And all that's doing is it's still leaving the analog preamplifier at the same technical gain there. Once it brings that sound in and then converts it to digital, then it's boosting it up. So that's how you can do that. All right, Red Frame Tech, off topic. Have you tested the DLZ creator as an NDI source for the OC Ghost Stream? I have not. That's a great question, Red Frame Tech. And by the way, I saw you over on the Mackie DLZ Discord. So putting in some really good feature requests. Thanks for that. I have not tested it yet. All right. I have an NTG2 and planning to get an F3 for documentary. Would you say it's a good combination? Yeah, that should work fine. The NTG2 it's one of the least sensitive condenser shotgun microphones I've ever used. So it needs a lot of boosting. So there may be a little bit of self noise there, but it's not a bad combination. I mean, pretty much anything with the NTG2 is going to be pushed to its limits a little bit based on the fact that it's one of the least sensitive shotgun microphones I've ever used. But yeah, that should work well. All right, Bartek. Hello, Curtis. What do you think of using DPA lavalier mics like a DPA 4060 with the Rode Wireless Pro? Will I hear any big difference compared to lavaliers from the set? Thanks for the help. I actually found that the Rode lavaliers were one of the better sounding lavalier microphones I've used. So, and they could be EQ'd fairly well as well. So I don't know that spending a lot of money on a DPA 4060 will make a big difference. I don't know the answer to that. I don't have any DPAs with a 3.5 millimeter input, so I haven't tested that myself. But my sense is that lavaliers always sound like lavaliers. And I don't mean that they all sound exactly the same. What I mean is that they always sound like they're attached to a body because they are attached to a body. So exactly where you put it makes a huge difference. The same microphone can sound awful here and amazing here. Well, amazing for a lavalier. So my sense is I don't, Bartek, the short version, I don't have a DPA 4060. I have not tested it with the Wireless Pro head-to-head with the included lavalier microphone. However, my sense is that if you have another reason for upgrading to a DPA 4060, I think that's fine. But I don't think switching to a DPA 4060 in and of itself will suddenly make your audio a lot better. That's the overall idea. All right, Brian, you can do your own frequency chart with the Nexadyne, Curtis, but granted, it appears they took every frequency and tailored the Nexadyne towards vocalization, but indirectly created other uses. Yeah, I would agree with that. That makes sense. All right, I'm on the F8N course. I am connecting Rode wireless and DJI mics to the F8N Pro, then connecting the F8N to the camera. I'm getting a very, very light buzz sound. Settings are Rode set to -18, F8N set to +66 dB, S5-2X at -6 dB, DJI set to -12, F8N set to +68, S5-2 -6 dB. Additionally, set F8N Pro settings, high pass filter 60 Hz. What was that? Okay. Yeah, I think you might have been one that just sent me an email this morning. I'll take a look into this, but I would connect the wireless units directly to the camera first and see if you still get the same hum or buzz or whatever it is you're experiencing. That'd be the first thing I would test. Simplify. This is always a good troubleshooting technique, is to simplify the signal chain, and then it'll help you identify where the problem is coming from. So that's the first thing I would look at. I'm assuming you're coming out of the is there a 3.5 millimeter output? F8N Pro, it does have, 3.5 millimeter sub out, 1.2, yep. I assume that's the one you're coming out of, is the 3.5 millimeter. So yeah. Also, you can buy, let me grab one here really quickly. This might or might not help, but there are these little isolators you can buy on, let me switch off of we're going to switch off the Nexadyne here. Okay, we're back on the Earthworks Ethos. You can buy these little isolating units at Amazon, for example. 3.5 millimeter input here, 3.5 millimeter output here. That's another thing you can try. Another thing you can try is make sure, if you have the camera and the recorder mounted together, just take the recorder off of the rig for a little bit and see if that changes, just for testing purposes. Sometimes you need some rubber isolation or something between the two of them to help make sure that you're not transferring anything like that. Those are the first things I would try. So let's continue this in email if you're the one that emailed me, and we'll get to the bottom of it. Okay. Charles, since I haven't invested in SM58s, Curtis's review would help a future choice. Absolutely. How about the Neumann KMS 104? Rather expensive. I notice Ms. Swift Era uses the TV band wireless Shure KSM8. Also money, dollar signs, but still the KSM8 head end. Nexadyne more sensitive than 58, so less comparable. Okay, I need to dissect this here just a minute. I haven't used the Neumann, so I don't know about the Neumann. So Taylor Swift is evidently using KSM8 wireless. Bucks. So that's one thing. Nexadyne, is the Nexadyne more sensitive? I don't think so. Like I said, I had to gain up to 60 dB with Nexadyne to get a similar level. So I didn't. Let's see. Like, we can look at the specs here and see. Oh, let's see here. Sensitivity, open circuit minus 54 dBV per Pascal. That's for the Nexadyne. Just for reference, let's go here. For the SM58, also minus 54. Let's go for the KSM8. I'm going to have to look that up, so give me just a moment here. Shure KSM8. Here we go. Dual dyne support. Spec sheet. Oh, okay. It wants to have me open that up again. Let's switch back here for just a moment. Whoops. I'm going to go get that. Okay, back to the Mac here. KSM8. Sensitivity minus 51. So the KSM8 is actually more sensitive than the Nexadyne or the SM58, to answer your question. Question. Amazing that almost 60 years old design, the SM58, is being compared to the Nexadyne. Yes. You're right. That's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
There's a lot of...
Speaking of 32-bit, with the discussion about the 8 series version 10 a week or two ago, Sound Devices had a live stream and confirmed the 8 series has multiple analog to digital converters for each channel. Ooh, thanks for following up with that, Christopher. That's very interesting that they waited until now to implement that. And the results were kind of interesting too. Okay, cool. Let's follow up an email. Let's get that solved for you. Red Frame Tech, actually I have to send my DLZ creator in for repair or even replacement. My unit apparently has a hardware fault preventing the latest firmware update. Were you able to update yours? I haven't updated mine for a few months, so I don't know if there's a new one since then, so I haven't tried it. I'm assuming you gave the second thumbs up on my feature request on Discord. Yes, I did. That was me. All right. Danny says, it's time for us to go and do the things that we do, all of those things. In the meantime, get out there, make some great sound. Talk to you next week. Take care, everybody.